Yes, so as I said, I'm Tim, and recently a deputy director, LIFD, focus on industrial engagement. A couple of and we've got Karen and Claire as they've introduced themselves as well. Just a little bit of general introduction on LIFD. It's a cross-disciplinary research institute, one of the largest in the university. It was really brought together based on Leeds' broad expertise in fluid mechanics and fluid dynamics and our long history of research in this area. And also it came off the back really of the Centre for Doctoral Training, that we are now in our third sort of cycle of fluid dynamics CDTs that have just started this year. So it's cross-disciplinary. That's the important bit. So it's not just with engineering where I'm based, but natural sciences, especially, but across the whole university. So we've got researchers and academics from over 12 departments or schools. And part of it is also as what this program is, to bridge the gap between industry and academia and try to broaden our academic horizons, but also help and solve industrial problems, which we know there are many. And as well as that is also underpinning training and knowledge transfer. So that is, we do some sort of professional development courses, and also, as I've mentioned, a lot of LIFD is associated with the training of the CDT students, but also other undergraduates and MSc students across the many schools that we're involved with. So we branch our sort of research horizons into these 8 themes, and these 8 themes sort of cover pretty much everything you could possibly imagine. So, I'm sure we'll ask in the application to discuss which theme area you're most associated with, but it'd be pretty hard to miss. But anyway, I think these categories are quite good. They sum up the drivers in terms of where we're focused going forward, as well as sort of being broad enough to cover everything that we do within the university. So we've got focus on the universe, process industry, so that's really where I'm focused on, clean energy, health and climate, environment as well. But also we do a lot of fundamental fluid dynamics, fundamental development of simulation codes as well as analytical theory. And as I've mentioned, the other aspect is knowledge transfer and training. So that was a very quick overview of sort of our remit on LIFD. A little bit about the scheme. We've this year put up to 5,000 per application per scheme. There are 4 sort of broad schemes or broad areas that they sort of do interlink a little bit, as I'll go through. Due to the nature of the funding where we've got it from, the funding cannot be spent on staff salary costs. Okay, so consumables, travel, etc., as we'll go through, are all able to be costed, bench fees, etc., but not actual staff salary costs. That's just a rule with the funding that we've got, and the funding is explicitly for industrial engagement. Okay, so we really need to see in applications that whatever is being proposed will help drive further industrial collaboration. This doesn't need to mean that the collaborations are new. We're not being restricted and saying that you have to pick a new industrial partner or whatever. You can have prior engagement, prior activities, but we need to see growth. We need to see how this program would help further grow and enact engagement with the industrial partner. So in terms of the areas, and it also cannot be spent on large equipment. So that is essentially single items over our equipment threshold, which is 5,000. So you wouldn't be spending on an equipment because you only get 5,000 for the scheme. All right, so that it means consumables, laboratory consumables are perfectly fine, but what we call large equipment, which are things costing 5,000 anyway, you're not allowed to put this into. So the categories, we've got seed cord funding for either sort of research pilot projects or knowledge exchange pilot projects, or workshops to develop industrial collaborations. Okay, so they're related. You could either have an idea that you want to sort of sit and discuss in a workshop area with your industrial partner, or bring in expertise or academic expertise from inside and outside the university, or focus on a research project to help sort of do some proof of concept funding to help develop ideas, or give some preliminary data to add to a larger funding application, for example. Again, noting that that it won't, however, pay for the staff costs for that. In a sort of a larger capacity, we can fund knowledge exchange visits, so what we call push-pull residencies for LIFD members, either to visit industry or for industry to visit the university. So as you can see, there's a little bit of interlinking, but here we're talking about longer term sort of collaborations or residencies. It doesn't necessarily mean an academic has to go to industrial partner full time, but we're talking over a period of months, say. There is no strict timeline that we expect these schemes to fall into, that the money has to be spent by July 25. But you could, propose a scheme where you visit a couple of days a week for 3 months, for example, or 6 months even. That doesn't matter. Or it could be for industry to come into the university and collaborate by using our facilities. So importantly, in our current understanding, it will pay for bench fees. So each school has bench fees that are required for visitors to come into the university for a period of time. That could mean to use laboratory facilities, but it also could mean to use our computational facilities, access to our library database. Essentially, the bench fees pay for University of Leeds IT account and username, and so you can access all the facilities that we can access in terms of the library and our high power computational suite ARC, for example. So I myself have hosted a number of industrial visitors for a period of months, not on this scheme, but when we were shelling out and paying for the bench fees. So personally, I think that's a really interesting idea, and with mutual benefit for the academic industrial partner there. Also, the money could be used to support funding calls, and Karen is going to talk more about the types of funding calls we see academic industrial collaboration going, but they could be KTPs, knowledge transfer partnerships, or innovate collaborative R&D calls. So we are talking probably funding more towards applied research, although we're not being picky. If you have a UKRI, EPSRC or NERC type call that industry is still very much a collaborative partner for, this funding can be used to support that. As I said, how you would use it might be, again, a series of workshops, for example, noting again it can't be used for staff costs explicitly. And so again, there's sort of links between these schemes really, and the fourth one, which is an evolution, I guess, of a workshop, is what we call problem solving groups, industry problem solving groups. These are sort of born out of I think our maths department used to host these, and they're quite big, I think, in maths groups, reading through it. But these are sort of larger industrial challenges that you get industry and academic people sat together for a period of time. It could be a week, for example. It doesn't necessarily mean a week full time, or it could be a day per week for a couple of months to try to sort of crack a big nut, basically. And as part of this scheme, LIFD would help facilitate the meetings as well. So this money could be paid on an external facilitator, but we will help arrange the meeting in person or virtually, and do a lot of the administration for these problem solving groups. This is something that we would like to see a bit more of. A little bit more difficult to arrange sometimes, because we are sort of viewing this as a sort of multi-person and multi-industry partnership to try to tackle some of the bigger fluids challenges that we have. Okay, so just a little bit more on each scheme. I have sort of talked through as I've gone on in that first slide. So some of this, I'm not going to talk through this slide. We'll give out these slides, so a lot of this information is given just for reminding you. But as I said, it's for new and existing partnerships, so it doesn't have to be just new partnerships. And talking through the type of funding that you can access, so travel, subsistence, consumables, laboratory and computing resources, and also travel and subsistence for an industry partner to come to Leeds, and bench fees for the industry partner to come to Leeds too, if you're looking to do one of these longer term industry placements, or industry to come to place in the university. In terms of how I view money for the seed corn pilot projects, as I've said, because we can't pay for staff fees, my sort of thinking is that, for example, a senior postdoc, as long as they have agreement with their line manager that they can use some of their time to fund a new partnership, would be able to use this money to kit out the lab and actually undertake the work, as long as they have agreement that their time can be spent on this. And that's very attractive for the industrial partner, because actually staff wages are quite expensive. But again, the focus is to use this as seed call funding, starter funding to develop longer term projects. So I've got postdocs in my group that are always talking to industrial partners, and quite often thinking, how do I get these people on board? How can I do a little bit of initial proof of concept work to show it's worth their time? And in generally, you do, if you've got time, sort of have to take it out of your own existing budgets to start things off. So at least here you can get funding for all the research requirements and travel requirements to go out to the industrial partner, et cetera. So that's where I see this funding being able to support. But yes, if it's supporting a current member of staff, I mean, it could be an academic member, but I'm probably not going to, no one would trust me to go into a lab and do anything at this stage, unfortunately. But, as long as there is clear agreement that the staff time can be used towards this by the line manager, then all the other costs can be paid for and costed up. In terms of how we're going to assess, we will send out an application with a number of requirements. So as I said, I'm recent to the role, so I haven't seen what a prior application looks like, but it won't be too onerous, I'm hopeful. But anyway, this is the type of assessment that we're going to base the applications on. Probably most importantly, the potential for the idea to lead to longer term activities, such as funding or publications. Okay, so it doesn't have to be towards a bigger funding pot, but as long as you can see a path towards, more concrete collaborations with industrial partner or partners, and, potential benefits to LIFD. Well, that is a potential benefit to LIFD because it is in our remit to work with industry. Need for funding and value for money. I mean, we are appreciated these are relatively small pots, and we will require justification of resources, but that's not going to be onerous really, because we're not talking about large pots of money. Again, I don't want to keep emphasizing it, but an agreement that someone, if they're an academic or postdoc member of staff, is going to do the work, is part of that justification. Yes, and I've said the award will not cover the costs, staff costs. The other thing note here is they could be used to support research carried out by undergraduate and MSc students. So this is a good time to talk about this. We have undergraduate research projects starting for most schools. They start in the first semester. So for our school, they will start in October. We've got a lot of students that would love to do an industrial project, and this is funding and a potential to get them to do an industrial project, and essentially they can do the project as long as the industrial partner is agreed that it's a student project, and results have to effectively be confidential to the student until their module outcomes. undergrad and MSc students love to do industrial partner projects generally. They love to see application of their research, and this is one avenue that they could, really get stuck into a really interesting, real life problem. And get a bit more funding for their research needs, and also travel. It could fund travel for students to the industrial partners to learn a bit more about the working in industry, for example. Okay, so so there's a lot of potential there, I think, in using this funding to help leverage undergraduate and MSc projects, which again is something that I do a lot with industry, and they like it because, as I said, it is fairly highly leveraged in terms of the student time, but it does generally lead to student projects that are much more engaged, and they really like it, to be honest. So I'll highlight that as given where we are in time in September, that's definitely an avenue that I can see potential in. Okay, the knowledge exchange, I have sort of talked about that, but yes, so we are talking longer term exchanges, but there is no set time limit, and there's no expectation, that it would be full time. It could be a day a week for some, for example, I've got someone from a company that's come in for a day a week over the summer, and bench fees, just letting you know, it is school dependent, so I can't speak for every school. For our school, they're about 5,000 per annum. So that is for an industrial partner to come in and have full, essentially, access to university facilities. There are potentially additional laboratory costs for specific pieces of kit if that is something that people need to use. But that's prorated. So if it's a 3-month project, then it would, you divide by 4, I believe. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So whatever 5 divided by 4 is, it's a smaller number than 5. So yeah. So that's generally how we work. So in terms of bench fees, they're prorated on the time it takes. But in terms of what we're after, we don't really mind how long a project goes for, or how often. We don't expect it's full time for 3 months, for example. But yeah, the funding will just need to be spent by July. And similar for an academic going out into industry, they will obviously pay for their travel, their accommodation, and those costs. And again, you just need approval from your line manager that you're able to undertake this work, and that it doesn't interfere with the rest of your roles. And yes, okay, application will be assessed on, just adding to that. Again, the benefits of the activity for the person doing the research and the industrial partner, and once more, the potential for it to lead to a longer term collaboration, and some of the wider benefits within the university. Okay, so one slide about the industry problem solving groups. So yeah, support will be provided by our team at Leeds to support the organisation and logistics of problem-solving groups. These events could be hosted in person at Leeds or online. A typical model will be 1 to 2 weeks, which could be run flexibly, with problems presented at the start by industry and report produced at the end. As I said, I've never done this personally, but I've been reading about it. This is a thing that seems to be quite big in the mathematics community. And yeah, it's a way of sort of having intense study on a larger industrial problem. We're expecting perhaps 2, 3, 4 industrial partners for these sorts of things, and again, the output is to hopefully start tackling some of the slightly larger industrial challenges, rather than a very specific problem that you might do a proof of concept work for. So these are sort of learning and engagement activities, sort of desk-based discussions and problem solving, rather than laboratory work. And I mean, here's an example of a sort of a week-long type of activity, but we do appreciate that's a week intense activity may be a lot for industry and academic people to take on board. So the specific model we're fairly flexible in. This is an area that we want to develop more, because it has been something that the academics in our math department have done in the past, and it seems something that we would like to roll out more widely within LIFD. So yeah, we're very open to proposals in this area. I think these are very interesting. I've never done one myself, but yeah, the idea is we're talking sort of larger scale challenges that focus activity over a number of days and a number of partners, including a number of academics. And again, in terms of value for industry, this is quite good, really, because the support will be provided by our team for the organisation and logistics. You're getting additional academic support, not just the academics that are actually involved with the week, but all the administration and arrangement of the activities will be done by us as well. So yes, and what we anticipate costs to go towards, I mean, obviously, food bookings, room bookings if they're done in person, but also the use of an external facilitator. So to pay for their time to come and facilitate, and as we said, it could be in person or online meetings, depending on what suits. So I think I've sort of talked through the thrust of the funding and the different sort of schemes or streams that we have. Yeah, so this is just some more information on industry problem solving. But I think I've sort of discussed what I want to there. The main key is to investigate a longer term, an issue of longer term significance or a more broader challenge, but something that's still industrially focused. Again, we're not talking extremely broad and general things that anybody would be interested in. We want a relatively focused industrial problem, but one of a larger scope that a number of partners may, have this similar sort of fundamental issues. In my line of work, process engineering, there are very similar process issues involved in many different industries doing, processing many different chemicals, but in terms of fluid dynamics, suffer similar issues in terms of optimizing their reactors or separation operations that if they sat down and could tackle together would benefit the entire community. And we could also, get students involved as well. So undergraduate and MSc student as training could be part of this to help engage students with real world problems as well. So you have a sort of potential to aid and use the expertise of students, and they are developing to be experts, both potentially from a research perspective, but also on a sort of problem solving and training perspective in this stream as well. All right, so I've just about come to the end of what I want to talk about. Just timescales for applications. So decision panels will be set up at the end of December, February, and April. December one will probably be at the start of January, but we're going to make applications submitted on a rolling basis a month prior. We would be happy to have applications at any time of year, to be honest, but I feel putting a rolling deadline at least gives a focused goal. So I will be sort of putting end of November as our first deadline. I would say, however, if because of the way student projects work, if anybody is particularly interested in using this to help develop an undergraduate, research project, we would be happy with getting and reviewing applications as they come in for that scheme, simply because I know that student projects are starting in October. So, if you get a funding, in December, it may not be enough to actually help the student if they're undergraduate projects. So yeah, I think we may allow in that respect early applications. I'll talk to Claire though. I'm allowed to say that, but I think deadline wise, something if it's involving undergraduate research projects, we appreciate the time restrictions. And lastly, as I said, all funding needs to be used by the end of July. That's really the only stipulation in terms of length that we're under. Okay, I will stop sharing that for now, because Karen will talk about furthering ways to engage in potential sources of funding. So talking about really the next stage, if you were using this to help, give you proof of concept data for funding applications, etc., how you may go to the next step.
Great. Okay, so I'm just going to talk about kind of ways that LIFD members and industrial partners can engage, and also some comments about potential sources of funding. Okay, so kind of first routes, Tim has touched on this in terms of opportunities to engage, include kind of the student routes. So as Tim has sort of said, this is a really good time to kind of put projects together for undergraduate, and MSc projects tend to be short term, 3 to 6 months. And if you've got a new link between industry that you want to kind of get going, then actually this is a relatively low risk, low cost way of doing it. And it's really good for building relationships and exploring new ideas. But also, obviously, we can go on to longer term kind of PhDs co-funded. We can also look at kind of linking into our CDT, Centre for Doctoral Training, we've just been renewed as the Future Fluid Dynamics. So this is much longer term and kind of usually about 3 to 4 years. But we can also look for funding from EPSLC for things like CASE. But actually, industry can also co-fund PhDs, and in that instance, obviously, industry will retain IP. So kind of the student route is a really good way for exploring real world challenges, and we can also kind of look at doing things like industry facing groups, as we've talked before, workshops and sandpits events as well. So we can look at kind of real life problems through this. Another way is to kind of go down the grant funded research route. So there are a number of different ways we can do this through knowledge transfer partnerships, which I'll say something about in a moment. It's normally cost shared. You've got a dedicated KTP associate. It's a couple of 2 to 3 years. But there's also Innovate UK funding that we can go for, which in that case will be led by industry, but also involving in larger research grants, which are, although it tends to be academically led, industry partners can take part and kind of go from a low risk, just kind of being kind of a support, or actually being a beneficiary in collaborative projects. And it's a very good way of building a relationship between industry and academia. So in terms of looking for funding, sorry, apologies, it's a bit busy. So for our colleagues internally, we have our own networks within the university for LIFD members, which I'm sure everybody is on, but we've also got kind of the professional funding databases that we can interrogate as well, Research Professional and Pivot RP, and that covers kind of worldwide funding and includes obviously UK funding as well. So if industry partners don't have direct access, we can do searches for funding on their behalf with our academics. But it's also useful to sign up to the UKRI website, and we can kind of sign up to the funding finder, but also to kind of charities and learner societies such as Royal Academy of Engineering, Royal Society. But it's also useful to kind of get in contact with the national contact points as well for kind of external funding, say through European funding, which I'll talk about in a moment. One thing you can also kind of, with UKRI, sign up to the newsletter, which kind of gives information on all the councils that are funding research, but also for industrial funding as well through the Innovate UK news. One thing that's kind of been very successful within the university, and we've got a dedicated team for this, is the knowledge transfer partnership route, where you have a dedicated associate, which is kind of a technically qualified graduate, postgraduate, who will be spending the majority of the time within the company, within the business, and it's really bringing kind of academic expertise into the business, and it supports development, tends to be at technology readiness levels kind of higher up, 4 to 7, but it's all about really driving new capabilities within the company and kind of having a lot of impact. It's very impact focused, and it is very much company driven. We are very successful with these, and I'll say we have a dedicated internal KTP team that can assist with putting these projects together. In fact, 70% of KTP associates are retained within the company, and 80% of companies tend to go on to actually work on collaborative projects within the university. So they're normally 12 to 36 months, but the average is kind of 24 to 28 months. For the grant covers, it's kind of co-funded, so there'll be kind of 50% coming in from large companies, but the SMEs kind of will get 67%, and the third sector, other organisations, so RTOs like we were talking before, will get 75%. And I'd say they tend to be, we have an academic supervisory team, but the most of the time is spent by the KTP associate within industry. But they obviously can come to the university and use the facilities of the university, and it's all about extracting knowledge. And we've got about an 80% success rate with that, so it's a very powerful way of kind of building collaboration with industry. But we can also look for things like Innovate UK Smart Grants, and in fact there's a competition which is open at the moment, and it closed on the 23rd of October. It's very much business led, kind of feasibility, prototype testing. It's not commercialisation, but it's, as I say, it's kind of it tends to be on the higher TRL levels. And the research organisations within an AUK Smart Grant will can share up to 30% of the costs. Durations, there's two different kind of, there's a shorter one, 6 to 18 months, which is costs up to 500k, and then there's a longer one up to 24k, which you can get up to 1 million. And again, these are very powerful kind of ways of collaborating with industry on real world problems. We have our own internal translational funding, which is our Impact Accelerator Awards. This is very good for building up. It's all about engagement and kind of development of relationships with new industry partners. So again, there's kind of, it provides early stage support, and you can use this, and kind of worked with academic colleagues to build up kind of new projects, and we've kind of used IAA funding to then build kind of produce larger projects, larger collaborative projects. At the moment, we potentially could be a call around November, but we're coming to the end of the funding at the moment. It ends actually in March next year. So we're not quite sure whether this funding round will happen at the moment, and we're hoping that the government will continue to fund IAA, but we won't know about that for 2025 until the end of the year. We'll know in October, and we'll be able to let everybody know about the kind of next potential round. Also, I'm a bit biased about this because I support EU funding. Horizon Europe, which we are now fully associated with as of 1st of Jan this year. It's a large amount of money. It's the biggest funding kind of in the world, actually, in terms of the budget. And we can actually link our industry partners into these collaborative projects, especially within kind of pillar 2, which is global challenges covering health, society, security, industry, space, digital, climate, energy, mobility, food, bioeconomy, etc. Which is, and there are lots of kind of at the moment, we've got access to the work programmes that are coming up in 2025. The scheme will end in 2027. So the latter work programmes tend to have higher TRL levels. But we've just actually put in last week an innovation action, which was with between our companies in the automotive industry, and we were very pivotal in putting that project together as a university. And these are really good ways of actually bringing kind of industrial partners into projects. There's also in the pillar 3 as well, European Innovation Council. That's very much bottom up. Used to be known as kind of Future Emerging Technologies, but then Pathfinder projects, and that's a very good way of kind of putting some very innovative projects together. So this is definitely worth looking at and signing up to the portal. And this is actually information of how you can do that. So it's actually quite a good time at the moment, because the new collaborative bids will be going in at the beginning of next year. So now is a good time to building up collaborations. But it's also worth looking at things like Royal Academy of Engineering as well, because there are different kind of streams for this. For instance, the industrial fellowships. It allows kind of academics to kind of swap between industry and academia, but also for industrialists to come and work with us within academia. So they can be secondments 3 to months up to 2 years, and it can also be part-time as well. But the industry can also kind of get involved with us on a kind of longer term basis with research chairs. And they have actually changed the rules. They've got a sliding kind of contribution. So small companies pay half of what large companies would, but it's over a 5-year award, and they are kind of funding from the Royal Academy of Engineering is kind of similar. Can also support PhDs and postdocs as well. So this is another good way of kind of interacting with industry. And then there's the direct funding stream that we can kind of do consultancy, kind of short-term projects, but also directly funded research as well. And again, it's a good way of building strategic partnerships. But also kind of industry partners can also sponsor activities and get involved with how LIFD operates. We've also got access to facilities as well, pay fee for service, and you can get involved with kind of, we can put CPD courses together, and that's something that we're looking into at the moment. And that's me finished. It's just really kind of some exemplars of where we can look for funding.